The Senate will come back to order. Majority Leader Heath.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the call of the Senate.
A call of the Senate has been moved and properly sustained. Will the sergeants please close the doors, allow no senators to leave, and return those senators who are absent from the chambers? Mr. Majors, would you please call the roll?
Aguilar. Balmer. Baumgartner. Brophy.
Don Johnson.
Cadman.
Here.
Crowder. Grantham. Guzman. Harvey. Heath.
Here.
Herpin. Hill. Hill. Hodge. John.
Sherry.
Johnston. Jones. Cafalis. Kerr. King. Lambert. Lundberg. Marble. Newell. Nicholson. Renfro. Renfro. Rivera. Roberts. Sheffel. Schwartz. Stedman. Tocktrop. Todd. Ulibarri. Zenzinger.
Oh, really? Wow. Depends on how we get out of here. We also can get you a room in our John.
Well, Gail and,
So it'd be Gail and you, and then
You right.
I could chauffeur you in the lesbian urban assault vehicle. You could sit in the back seat. No, I really would like to get to know her better.
I think you'll like her. She's
Leadership.
I think
Gosh,
it'd be,
we'll almost have a quorum up there at
That's
my
right.
mom's house.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. What time do we need to be there?
I think it starts at 6, but and it's good because you're the chair of our committee that
No,
afternoon.
we'll just adjourn.
And so we had one big,
happier place for me. But they now, they'll be going around to all your desks and reaching up here and grabbing the food off so they can eat it. If there's any food in this chamber, they would find it and eat it before you'd have a chance to even secure it. Yeah, they're pretty good about going outside for that. If they need to go out, they'll ask to go out. If we take over, that's going to be the only request that I make after being chair of business. I want to have at least one day a month we can bring our dogs to the chamber or to our offices. Required. That's right. No, not regulations. No regulations at all. Oh, good. You got dogs at home? So would you be excited about having dogs come down to the Capitol all the time? Yeah. Yeah, it's already pretty deep around here.
Hill. Renfro. Madam President.
Here. Majority Leader Heath.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the call be raised.
The motion is to raise the call. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Yeah, the ayes have it. The call is raised. Senator Schwartz renews her motion for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. We believe there may be amendments on the desk.
So you don't need.
She's already done it.
Okay.
You've done
Got
it.
it, okay. I thought you were going to do it, and I'll do it.
No, she did it herself.
So do we have to take a vote?
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment, Committee of the Whole, Amendment 1 by Senator Harvey?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 158. Senator Harvey moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to show that the following amendment to Senate Bill 14158 did pass. Amend printing bill, page 5, line 26, strike no and substitute except where he or she reasonably determines that doing so would be impossible or would violate law or a court order, comma, no.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a cleanup amendment that was requested by the Secretary of State. Right now, I would like to move Amendment 001 to the Committee of the Whole amendment.
Hey, please.
And right now, the statutes read that the Secretary of State shall have the ability to reasonably determine that running an election may be impossible or would violate the law or a court order. This simply says that a clerk and recorder may do so also. It's not just up to the Secretary of State to make that motion. A clerk and recorder can make that motion as well.
Senator Stebbins.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I respectfully request a no vote. And just a few words about process to this point. There was testimony last Friday in the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee about the work we went through to put this bill together. It is a late bill. It took quite a while to draft, and there was involvement from the County Clerks Association, and someone from the Secretary of State's office actually sits on their committee that was consulted with the draft of this bill, and they had input into the process. And this is not something that we saw in committee last Friday. There were no amendments offered during the committee, except for the two that the sponsors brought that were part of the committee report we've previously adopted. There were no amendments offered during second reading of this bill. And so now this is the first time we've had to see this, and come to find out it's something dealing with a particular provision in the bill that the Secretary of State's office has been aware of for some time. And so just on process, I have an objection, but also on substance, I would like to suggest that this adds an element of subjectivity into the language of the bill that I think is unwarranted and could be problematic. And for those reasons, I'll ask for a no vote.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. Process. That's the argument, that process. Again, the reason why I hadn't offered amendments, and this amendment was provided to me in the State Affairs Committee by the Secretary of State, but I'm not going to go back and re-argue the fact that I offered 50 amendments to 1303, the perfect bill that didn't need amendments, and then we had 1164, 105 pages.
Senator Harvey, please keep your comments to this Committee of the Whole to Senate Bill 158.
I'm responding to the process issues.
The process was raised on Senate Bill 158, and you may respond on Senate Bill 158.
And so then the Secretary of State brought forward amendments that I'm the senator. I can offer an amendment anytime I want to. That's the process. I'm an elected official just like all the other 34 members of this assembly is. Any of you can offer an amendment at any process, unless you're on the committee. Unless you're not on the committee, you can't offer an amendment in committee. But I am, and I chose not to. And the reason why is because not one amendment I've ever offered on any election bill ever has been accepted, including today on second reading, when I offered amendments. I actually gave them to the members prior to the debate so that we wouldn't have senatorial fives every time, and those amendments still were not accepted. And so here I am. The reason why this amendment wasn't offered on second reading is because I was walking to my desk to pick them up, and the chair gavelled and said, seeing no more, the vote is. That's fine. I still have the opportunity to offer them as a Committee of the Whole amendment. I wasn't going to argue about that. I wasn't going to make an issue of that. That's the process. This is the process. It's Committee of the Wholes. I can offer amendments on Committee of the Whole. That's the process. So here we are. Secretary of State has said, why should the Secretary of State be the only one as an elected official to be able to say that this election that's going forward may have problems. The other election officials that run elections throughout the state should have the same authority to do that. That's all this amendment says, is let the clerk and recorders who are closest to the elections make that determination. Why should we say that they shouldn't be able to? That's all this amendment does, and I think it's a reasonable amendment. And you can argue that it's not a reasonable amendment, but to argue that simply on process, Senator Harvey shouldn't be allowed to have an amendment come forward, that's not an argument. I ask for an aye vote on this amendment, and I ask for a roll call.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, what this amends is the part of the statute that says we'll have a recall, we'll have a mail ballot election. And it says, unless they reasonably determine doing so would be impossible. That's a long way to go for a designated election official, which could be the Secretary of State. We want this to be a mail ballot election. I would ask you to vote no on this so we continue to have that.
Question is the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1. A roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Majors, would you please poll the senators on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1?
Aguilar. Aguilar, no. Balmer. Balmer, aye. Baumgartner. Baumgartner, aye. Brophy. Brophy, aye. Cadman. Cadman, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Grantham. Grantham, aye. Guzman. Guzman, no. Harvey. Harvey, aye. Heath. Heath, no. Herpin. Herpin, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Hodge. Hodge, no. John. John, no. Johnston. Johnston, no. Jones. Jones, no. Kafalis. Kafalis, no. Kerr. Kerr, no. King. King, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lundberg. Lundberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Newell. Newell, no. Nicholson. Nicholson, no. Renfro. Renfro, aye. Rivera. Rivera, aye. Roberts. Roberts, aye. Scheffel. Scheffel, aye. Schwartz. Schwartz, no. Stedman. Stedman, no. Toktrop. Toktrop, no. Todd. Todd, no. Ulibarri. Ulibarri, no. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, no. Madam President.
No.
Madam President, no.
With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 fails. There's another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment 0, Cow Amendment 2?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 2 to Senate Bill 158. Senator Harvey moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to show that the following amendment to Senate Bill 158 did pass. Amend print and bill page 4, line 26, strike print 3.5, page 5, strike line 6 through 12.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Amendment 002 to the Committee of the Whole report.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, this is the section of the bill that is defying the state constitution with regards to recalls. And let's talk about process. Let's talk about process. This constitutional amendment was put in over 100 years ago. Nobody's ever questioned it. Nobody's had any problems with it. There were bills that were passed that conflicted with it. There were elections won and lost because of the implementation of it, and court rulings that were made and court rule decisions that people won or lost on because of it. but never has there been a ballot effort to amend it. And the process by which you change the Constitution, the process that you do that is through a constitutional amendment. That is the process. But let's talk about this process. This bill is trying to amend the Constitution because of the outcome of those court rulings and the outcome of some elections. The current reading of the Constitution says that once a recall signatures have been certified by the clerk and recorder, the governor shall thereupon order and fix the date, singular, for holding the election. The date, election day. The date for when the election is. And the judge ruled that if the election day that the governor set is date 1, then you have to go back 15 days and say how long the candidates have to get their petitions in. 15 days before the date that the governor fixed to be election day. That resulted in not being able to have a mail-in ballot per what we did with 1303. So the court ruled that you can't have a mail ballot per the Constitution because there's not time. That's what the Constitution says. That's why this bill is brought forward. If you want to follow the process and you don't agree with what the Constitution says and you want to allow people the opportunity to have mail ballots, then you have to amend the Constitution. You will hear arguments, as we did on second reading, that we will disenfranchise military voters if we don't pass this bill. Let's look at what this bill does. This bill says that you will have 15 days prior to Election Day to get your ballots in. Then you will have 22 days prior to that to get the mail ballots out. Well, what current state statute says with regards to military voters is 45 days. That you have to mail out mail ballot votes is 45 days. Okay. So if you don't want to disenfranchise military voters, and the reason why you're doing this bill is to allow military voters the opportunity to vote, and you have 15 days and 22 days, how many days is that? Not 45, 37. So is it the intent of this bill to disenfranchise military voters? Because that's what you were saying you were going to do. Because current state statute says that you have to mail them out 45 days before the election. But this bill is saying 37 days before the election. So if the argument is we have to harmonize current state statutes to the Constitution, you're still not doing it. But you are violating the Constitution by passing this bill. That's not harmonizing the Constitution to state statute. Why are we doing it that way? The reason why we're doing it that way is because you cannot harmonize the Constitution to what is currently in state statute with regards to mail ballots. We can fix this. I would vote with you to fix it. If we moved the calendars, did away with the 15-day thing in statute in the Constitution, and moved the guidelines back to allow for the 45 days for mail ballots, but still said the governor got to fix election day, we could amend the Constitution and do that. We could make the Constitution harmonize with state statute if we asked the voters to do that. Because that's the process to take away that 15-day ambiguity that's the justification for this unconstitutional bill. If you truly are going to make the argument that we want to make it allowable for military voters to get their ballots 45 days beforehand, then do it. Amend the Constitution. Amend these timelines that are in the Constitution. But if you're not going to amend the Constitution and still have these mandatory deadlines in the Constitution, you are disenfranchising military voters by definition. You are not giving them the full timeline by which state statute and federal law says for federal elections you should get out military voter ballots. This amendment does away with that portion of the bill that violates the constitutional requirement to amend the Constitution in the manner that we are doing in this bill, and I would ask for an aye vote and a roll call on protecting the Constitution.
Senator Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, members, I'd ask for a no vote on this. This makes sense out of what we have, and if you don't like the situation now where overseas ballots could be going out 22 days ahead of time, I'd like to see your solution. The fact is, without this bill, those people won't be getting mail ballots. It's very simple. Also, this term election day, it's important to note that the term election day is not now defined in the Colorado Constitution or statutes. General election is defined in 14201 as being the Tuesday succeeding the first Monday of November in every even-numbered year. The Constitution in Article 7, Section 7 states that the general election shall be held on such day as may be prescribed by law. I want you to listen closely what day might be prescribed by law. In the recall provision of the Constitution in Article 20, in 21, election day is not defined, and rather the provision states in Section 2, when such petition is sufficient, the officer with whom such recall was filed shall forthwith submit said petition together with certificate of sufficiency to the governor, who shall thereupon order and fix the date for the holding the election not less than 30 days, nor more than 60 days from the date of the submission of said petition. Senate Bill 158 not only complies with this language, it also amends 112-111, which previously violated the Constitution by allowing the election to be set 45 to 75 days after submission. So in summary, members, Senate Bill 158 is needed to sync old constitutional law and modern voting practices in order to enable voters to exercise their fundamental right to vote. So, if you want folks to vote by mail, if you want that opportunity for disabled people, elderly people, people overseas to have at least a chance at voting by mail, I would please vote no on this amendment.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. There are some bills that come our way that make better examples of what's wrong down here than others, and this is one. This amendment that's being offered on this Committee of the Whole report is most appropriate because it fixes that glaring problem that Senate Bill 158 has, that most glaring problem of trying to finagle around the state constitution. The argument was just made that this is the only way we can ensure that military can vote. I thoroughly agree that the military should be able to vote in every election. I'm also quite well aware that that in the recall elections that did occur, that every effort was made and those ballots were available for the military. And I quite agree that we've got a dilemma in the way the system works, but bear in mind, this is a constitutional issue. This is conforming Colorado election law to the state constitution. We can't touch that. The legislature cannot, of its own accord, change the Constitution, and yet that's exactly what Senate Bill 158 is going to do without this amendment. Hence, I strongly recommend that we support this amendment. If not, this turns into one of those bills I love to hate because it's such a perfect example of what's wrong around here. There's this legal finagling that occurs in order to get our way regardless of what the rules are. And the rules start with the Constitution. They don't start with what we want. They start with what we took an oath to uphold. And this amendment strikes that. Now, look, why? Well, because somehow we come up with this notion that we can redefine Election Day, or technically, date for holding the election. Now, that's been one of those self-evident terms, date for holding the election. What about federal elections? What is the date for holding a federal election? It is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of even-numbered years. That's when federal elections are held. That's Election Day. Now, of course, this won't apply there because this can't work there. It's so absurd. So, in order to finagle around the Constitution, we're going to take that understanding of a term, Election Day. Yes, I know, and here's kind of the history of how this has been managed around there. Is at first there was an attempt to give an absentee ballot voter an opportunity to vote if they aren't available on Election Day. And then there was an expansion of that to, well, let's do this for everybody, and then let's do this by mail, and then let's put people on permanent mail ballot systems, and then let's make everybody vote by mail. Well, we lost the concept that this bill, Senate 158, is now flying in the face of, and that is, what is Election Day? The people of Colorado know what Election Day is. It's the day on which the vote is held, and we've tried to accommodate the needs of many voters or the wants of many voters by extending some early voting procedures, but Election Day is still that final day, and that's exactly what the Constitution is speaking of when it says in 15 days before a recall election, citizens have the opportunity to submit petitions to be on the ballot as an alternative to the person being considered for recall. It's there. It's totally clear. Now, there is a cure to this. This isn't the only way to address it. This is the only illegitimate way to address it. Or, well, maybe you could dream up a few more. But there is a legitimate, legal way to address it, and that is change the Constitution. Now, we can play a role in that, or the citizens can through an initiative process. That would cure the dilemma that is contemplated here. But to put it in Senate Bill 158, this finagling around the Constitution is completely inappropriate. Hence, the amendment before you is precisely what we need. But, at your peril, vote against it. We've seen votes like that in the past, and now we have a bill on recalls.
Any Any further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 2? Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. So the argument is if you want all mail ballots, then vote against this bill. That's the argument. If you want all mail ballots for every election, vote against this bill, vote against this amendment. We still have absentee ballots. Absentee ballots were still utilized in the recall election. Those are mail ballots. Those still conform to the Constitution and the ability for people to vote. We had polling booths open for 2 weeks, including on Saturdays and Sundays. We had people voting. Military voters had their ballots emailed to them. And they could email them back, actually. We had them mailed to them. And we had them mailed back. And they were counted up to 8 days after the election day. People were able to vote. They had mail ballots. They had election day or voting centers. And they had military ballots. To argue that people were disenfranchised because of what the Constitution says, I think it's a hard argument to make. But the Constitution still says what it says. And let me remind you what the court said in their hearings on state statute trying to amend or trying to be implemented around the state constitution. It would be absurd. The results here would be to ignore the clear language of Article 21 and to let the statute control simply because it would be easier and more expedient to do so. So if your argument is you want mail-in ballots, what you are saying is our statute to achieve that objective is more expedient to carry statute than to amend the Constitution, because that's what you're doing here. But the Constitution mandates cannot be ignored because of your desires, because of inertia, nor can a constitutional amendment, a constitutional mandate be ignored because it is supposedly archaic, because it is older than 10 months. Because that's what the definition of archaic would be in this argument. Because we haven't had all mail ballots for more than 10 months. How did we run elections 11 months ago? How did we run elections in 2013? How did we run elections in 2012 without all mail ballots? We did it. People were still able to vote. Article 21 stands in the way of what the legislature considers the efficient way of conducting elections. That's what the court says. The remedy is to repeal Article 21, amend Article 21, but not to pretend that it doesn't exist. If your objective is to have all mail ballots, that's your public policy right as an elected official. Fine. Get 2/3 of the vote and put it on the ballot as a referendum, or get the signatures to put it on the ballot. But that's not what you're doing here. The Constitution gives the governor the ability to fix the date of the election. That's all he gets to do, is fix the date of the election, not a 37-day date of the election. The argument is nowhere in statute is election day defined. in the election code regarding recalls for municipalities, it says applications for absentee ballots shall be made available by the municipal clerk, absentee ballots, no later than 24 hours after the governing body fixes the date for holding the recall election. So it doesn't say election day, but it does say fix the date prior to holding the recall election. So our Constitution says the governor shall fix the date. Our statute says that the election clerk, the municipal clerk, shall fix the date for holding the recall election. The date. The common use of the term fix the date is fixing the date of the election, election day. Do you think last year when Governor Hickenlooper set the date for the election that he had any misunderstanding of what that term fix the date meant? Do you think that the media had any misunderstanding of what that term fix the date of the election meant? Do you think that the candidates, the senators that were being brought up for a recall, had any misunderstanding of what that term fix the date of the election meant? Do you think that those that were petitioning on to be candidates, do you think they had any misunderstanding of what the term fix the date of the election is? If we are trying not to confuse the voters, we're going to fail with this bill. Because what we are saying to the voters is the governor shall fix the date of when the 37-day election begins. And you don't think that's confusing? The common understanding of the term fix the date of the election, where it is used in the Constitution or where it is used in municipal recall elections, is well understood. The municipal clerk, no later than 24 hours after the governing body fixes the date for holding the election through the close of business day on the 5th day before the recall election. It makes pretty good common sense to me. And if we want to change that definition, go to the ballot box. Otherwise, you are saying to the courts and to the people and to the Constitution, we lost our battle in court, we lost our battle on election day, but we have the votes here and we will change it however we want to. And that's not our job. You don't have the authority to do that.
Any other discussion? Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to speak from my heart to all of you because I think all of you have had this kind of conversation. How many of you have received phone calls from constituents that were quite upset and had that frustration in their voice like they were at their wits' end? And how many times in those conversations have they asked the question, why are you doing this? And I think the reason they ask that question is because they can't, in their own mind, come up with a rational reason why politics involves itself in so many of our decisions. And of course, I don't have to tell you that voters are very disillusioned with us. Not just us, I think our friends up in Washington are a few steps ahead of us on that score. Why is that? Well, when a certain party, and both parties are very guilty of this over the years, when a certain party can't win an election, what do? They go out and change the districts. They gerrymander the districts so that that party that's in power can somehow or another maintain their power. As I said, Republicans have done that, Democrats have done that. And that tends to make the American public and our citizens here in Colorado have less confidence that they're going to let the people make decisions. And then we spend entire days at the Capitol debating bills about changing how the rules of voting are going to be done. We did that a lot last year. Now, are we tackling the difficult issues of Colorado when we are up here arguing as two parties against each other about who gets to vote when, how, which way, and is that going to give one party an advantage over the other? Can you see why they are disillusioned with us? And now, to top it all off, we want to take away their constitutional right for a recall, or at least dramatically tweak it to the extent that they no longer have their constitutional right to recall. Or why are we even messing with their constitutional right to recall? Why do you think the founders of our state put this in the Constitution? Could they have been thinking forward to that day when, in fact, it would be an opportunity for someone to try to mess with their right to recall? So, Madam President, I appreciate your indulgence. It was hard to fit that underneath the amendment, but I asked for a yes vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Question is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 2. Are there any no votes? A roll call vote was requested. Mr. Majors, please poll the senators.
Aguilar. No. Aguilar, no. Balmer. Balmer, aye. Baumgartner. Baumgartner, aye. Brophy. Brophy, aye. Cadman. Cadman, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Grantham. Grantham, aye. Guzman. Guzman, no. Harvey.
Aye.
Harvey, aye. Heath. Heath, no. Herpin. Herpin, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Hodge. Hodge, no. John. John, no. Johnston. Johnston, no. Jones. Jones, no. Kefalis. Kefalis, no. Kerr. Kerr, no. King. King, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lundberg. Lundberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Newell. Newell, no. Nicholson. Nicholson, no. Renfro. Renfro, aye. Rivera. Rivera, aye. Roberts. Roberts, aye. Scheffel. Scheffel, aye. Schwartz. Schwartz, no. Stedman. Stedman, no. Talktrop. Talktrop, no. Todd. Todd, no. Uleberry. Uleberry, no. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, no. Madam President. Madam President, no.
17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused. Committee of the Whole Amendment 2 fails. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 3 by Senator Harvey?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 158. Senator Harvey moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to show that the following amendment to Senate Bill 158 did pass. Amend printed bill page 8, line 5, strike enforcement of and substitute application to recall election.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. I move Amendment 003 to the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. This is another amendment that was brought forward, I believe, by the Secretary of State. May have been, I think it was by the Secretary of State. This simply tightens the provisions dealing with previous court rulings with regards to circulators. The way the bill is written right now and the way recall wording is it's kind of loose with regards to the court rulings with regards to petition circulators, and this simply says that this bill, when it comes to recall circulators, petition circulators, that those rules will be applied similar to the court rulings with regards to residency requirements and the fact that petitioners can be paid in accordance with the previous court rulings. And so that's essentially all this amendment does, is tighten those provisions to specifically say that they apply to the previous court rulings. And so I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Madam President. And this goes to a section of the bill that we did discuss in the committee hearing in the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. And actually, when Senator Harvey, I believe it was you that raised this issue, I confessed that actually not a complete fan of all of those laws that have been passed in the past about regulating the First Amendment protected activity of petitioning. And in fact, this amendment cites a couple of specific court cases in which provisions of our initiative laws have been overturned as unconstitutional restrictions on First Amendment petition activity. The section of the bill on page 8 that this amendment amends is an attempt to apply, to the extent that they are not determined to be unconstitutional and enjoined from enforcement, existing petition regulations to the process of carrying recall petitions. And I do think it is an important piece of this bill to standardize those requirements so that we don't have two separate standards for what are the rules around petitioning based upon the nature of the petition that you happen to be carrying. I believe that's an unconstitutional content discrimination to treat different types of petitions differently. And so that's why through Senate Bill 158, we're trying to apply the same set of petition rules to any petition that someone may be carrying for election purposes, regardless of its nature. And so as I read this, Senator Harvey, and I wish I'd have had more time to spend with this amendment, but this is the first time I've seen it. But as I read it, you are further clarifying what this language is trying to do. And for that reason, granted, I've only spent a few minutes with it, but I understand it, and it is going to something that I do have a little bit of discomfort with in terms of we have some unconstitutional things on the books still that are outside the scope of this bill to fix, but we certainly don't want to apply those unconstitutional provisions to recall petitions. And so I think this amendment helps clarify our intent in this language in Section 5 of the bill. I'll ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. A question for the sponsor. The amendment ends in this kind of open-ended or any other proceeding. What might that be?
Senator Harvey.
Thank you. I am not a fortune teller, so I do know that these court cases have been ruled and determined what is unconstitutional, and what we need to ensure is harmonized between what the courts have ruled and what they haven't ruled. But I cannot look into the future and see where the court may make future rulings and determine that other parts of the statute with regards to election law may be ruled unconstitutional. I can guess which one we're voting on today will be ruled unconstitutional, but I don't know that. And this leaves it open for in the future, if there is a court ruling that says that something is unconstitutional, that the Secretary of State and the clerk and recorders can roll that into their interpretation of election law implementation as well.
The Senate will stand in a brief recess. The Senate will come back to order. Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. For the time being, I withdraw Amendment 3 to the Committee of the Whole.
Committee of the Whole Amendment 3 has been temporarily withdrawn. I believe there are some other amendments on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 161?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 161.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Amendment 001 to Senate Bill 161, Committee of the Whole. This is going back to the argument about whether ballots are confidential and private. And I want to read an email that I got while we were gone over lunch. It says, this individual is the poster child for that amendment. I was forced to choose a DRE voting as the last of 7 voters, and I entered my name on a list of 6 in order. The paper trail contained my vote last and theirs just above mine, so it wasn't private. The mail ballot I was offering was a unique print from ballot and demand and not the same as other printed ballots. So everybody's mail ballots looked one way, and this individual's ballot looked completely different. So that one would have been non-anonymous when I cast it in an envelope, but also not anonymous that later when mixed with other ballots of the same ballot style. I need Senate Bill 009 desperately, as do many small county voters as well. Members, this individual, this gentleman, and I will stress gentleman, had his ballot compromised. It was not anonymous. It was not secret. Those that were opening the envelope could look and see that he signed it and what his vote would be, but also it went into the batch with everybody else's, but his was completely different than those that mailed in their ballots. So when the vote came out, they would know, if they hadn't looked at the envelope, they would know regardless that that was his vote because he voted on election day with a separate ballot. It's not anonymous. That's simply what this amendment is trying to do, is to fix that situation so that ballots are anonymous. I think it's appropriate, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, again, we've already discussed this. There are adequate protections to ensure that folks can vote private ballot. We've already addressed that legislatively with more requirements, both in election changes that came last year and then core requirements that happened through Senator Heath's bill a few years ago. Sorry, the Majority Leader's bill a few years ago. I also received the same message from Mr. Branscombe, who has tried many times to undermine the election system. And so I again ask for a no vote.
Senator Harvey.
Madam President, for a senator here to come up and say that an individual citizen is trying to undermine the election system and get away with it by calling out the individual by name at the floor of the Senate is inappropriate and should have been gavelled out of order. We are not allowed to call each other out by name. And the senator for Commerce City can come up and call a citizen of the state of Colorado who has sent an email to his representatives in this body and say that he is undermining the election process because he's sending an email. That is inappropriate.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize to my colleagues for using someone's name. Just wanted to clarify I did receive the same message and wanted to indicate I didn't think that this amendment is appropriate.
Further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1. Senator Harvey.
The reason why he says it's inappropriate is because it cannot happen anymore. Harvey Branscombe said that it did happen to him. How can it not, if it can't happen anymore, how could it have happened to him? It did. It did. But his argument is vote against this amendment because it can't happen anymore? And then to say that it's undermining the election process because somebody is involved in election policy? It is happening. That's why this amendment is put forth. He is the poster child who lives in a small community where it is easy to track how somebody voted. But the argument is disregard it because it's not happening anymore? And somebody's saying, please fix this? But that's undermining the election process because somebody takes this seriously? And because they take it seriously, they're undermining this august body from passing election policy? Vote yes on this amendment.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. The comments from the senator from Commerce City brought me down here as well because I believe if apologies are due, it's due to the citizen who's been besmirched by any comments from this well. And you know, the curious thing is, I know the gentleman in question, and I don't always agree with him. As a matter of fact, he's from the other party. But it brought me down here because I want you to know that there are many citizens who are deeply concerned with what's been happening to our election process. There has been undermining of the election process, but it hasn't been from citizens who are deeply concerned and have spent, on the part of some, hundreds of hours trying to unravel the complex maze that we put in place down here. I'm deeply troubled when I hear comments like that because we need a credible election system. We don't need an election system that just works for one party or another party. We need an election system that works for the citizen whose vote needs to be counted, whose vote needs to be counted with credibility and confidence in a system that will recognize one citizen, one vote.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Question is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to 161. Are there any no votes? Senators Aguilar, Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Ulibarri, Senators Nicholson, John, Zenzinger, Kafalas, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Hodge, Schwartz, Kerr, Todd, Newell, Toctrop, Johnston, Stedman, Jones. Please add the President. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, this Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 fails. I believe there is another amendment on the desk. Okay. There's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 5?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 5 to Senate Bill 158. Senators Stedman and Jones moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole show that the following amendment to Senate Bill 158 did pass, and that Senate Bill 158 as amended did pass. Amendment printed bill, page 8, line 5, strike enforcement of and substitute application of recall.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the Stedman-Jones amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole for Senate Bill 158.
Please proceed.
Colleagues, this is a smaller version of the language that was previously offered and then withdrawn a moment ago. And it includes the same clarity as far as expressing that provisions in law found to be unconstitutional will not apply to recall petitions, but it does not go into the detail of citing court cases and orders, bench orders from the district court. And the way this paragraph at the top of page 8 in your bill reads is actually sufficiently broad to take into account past court rulings and also future court rulings. And we don't think that we need to go into the detail of citing these two particular cases when there may be others, there could be others in the future. We're better off with the broad language that speaks about not enforcing petition restrictions found to be unconstitutional. And so, again, I think this is an important provision in the bill because we should have the same standards for petition circulation regardless of the type of petition you are circulating, whether it's a ballot initiative petition or a recall petition. Same sets of rules, same affidavits, same requirements of the circulator and any paid entities that are behind it. That's one of the things this bill is accomplishing. And I think we can clarify this language a little bit without going into the detail of tying it down to particular district court rulings. So I would ask for your aye vote on the Committee of the Whole amendment. I believe it's number 5 by Senators Stedman and Jones.
Further discussion? Question is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 5. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 5 is adopted. We are back to the Committee of the Whole. The motion before the body is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? Senator Harvey, Senator Baumgartner, Senator Crowder, Senator Lambert, Senator Lumberg, Senator Grantham, Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Renfro, Shuffle, Herpin, Balmer, Marble, Hill, Roberts, King, Rivera.
Yes.
With 19 ayes, 16 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 158 is amended, Senate Bill 115 is amended, Senate Bill 161 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 11, Pilar. John. Zenzinger, Hodge, Todd, Schwartz, Jones, Newell, Johnston, Ulibarri, Toktrop, okay, so the no votes we have are Senator Aguilar, Senator Hodge, Senator John, Senator Johnston, Senator Jones, Senator Kafalis, Senator Newell, Senator Nicholson, Senator Schwartz, Senator Toktrop, Senator Todd, Senator Seven is a no, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Guzman, were you an aye or a no? Senator Guzman is a no. Senator Heath, is a no. And I believe Senator Kerr was a no. It's what happens when I go too fast on the names. I make it hard for Mr. Majors to keep up. Thank you. Please add the president. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the motion for immediate reconsideration is denied. Announcements. Senator Lumberg.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, there's a very interesting event happening tonight at 6 o'clock, starting at 6 o'clock at the Colorado Convention Center concerning the subject of Article 5. That's Article 5 of the United States Constitution, otherwise known as amending the Constitution. It's concerning federalism, which should interest us all because that means state legislatures still have some responsibility and authority in the 21st century in this country. I would recommend that if you want to know more about what I think might be the biggest political discussion of the next several years across our country, you might want to check this out. It's at the Convention Center tonight, room 605, the Article 5 Symposium. You're all cordially invited.
Members, I'm proud and pleased to welcome to the floor Senator Dan Gibbs, who is joining us on the floor today. Please help me welcome him back. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Madam President. And I think you have found on your desks an invitation tomorrow to tour the Community College of Aurora Film School. And the address was not listed, but it is 9075 East Lowry Boulevard. Starting at 2 o'clock, a group from Nigeria is here in the United States doing some training with our own film school. And if you would like to go, you're on your own. There's not an organized bus or anything, but if you're interested in going, just let me know so that I can let them know about how many people to expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been told the Finance Committee was going to have a special committee meeting tomorrow. That has now been canceled, so the Finance Committee will not meet Friday. And with that, Madam President, I move Senator Tokroff.
Senator Tokroff.
Thank you, Madam President. And may I please have a moment of personal privilege?
Granted.
Senator Johnson, you don't have to listen, but two things. We are getting close to sine die, and I do need rubber bands so the ball bounces. The other thing, I want to congratulate the freshman senator from Colorado Springs because he does remember tradition. You know, I don't know if many of you all remember it because of the turnover, but Thursdays were always camel hair coat Thursdays, and anyway, the freshman senator from Colorado Springs remembered it. Thank you.
Very nice. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the Senate adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow, March 28th.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The Senate will adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, March 28th.